with the Nicaraguans, they got in situations that I really feel, looking in retrospect, that they didn't.
You can skirt around it too.
They didn't get a good. Details. I don't think the U.S. government gave them a good deal at all. I never seen them driving Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and living in big houses on the waterfront in Miami. And I knew them well enough that they actually were contributing to their war project and really trying to stabilize their families. And they never really got a good deal from the government. I think they were really given I don't know the circumstances that brought them here, at what point in negotiations that they actually got brought here as Contras. Really do think the U.S. government basically gave them a bad deal, unless there's things I don't know that are happening back in Nicaragua where the exodus was a negotiating point for them to put up with the conditions of food stamps and living in public housing and stuff, and still doing large-scale drug deals and weapon exchanges. And these people weren't disappearing. They're still around today, and I don't see them financially ahead at all. I seen them go into exuberant large amounts of sums to bail themselves out of international trade deals, and I never seen the Colombians have those problems. Of course, this is a different deal. The market flooded in the late 80s, so actually there was a point to where it really was almost hard to get rid of. The retail prices were totally blown out of proportion, and then there was a dry spell. That's where the money was really, really made by very smart strategic players. But as far as the Cali cartel is concerned,
when was that exactly?
About 1989, I think the dry spell was. 87, 89, don't quote me on it, but those people that are listening to this that remember it will remember that well. And the problems with the dry spell that happened is you put money forward and you never got to see it again because people couldn't retrieve any product to make a profit. So there was a lot of real complications. That's the way you get robbed. They pull out a gun, you pull out a gun.
How did that story unravel if you can?
I can't detail it because there's people that are currently still involved with, and I don't want to create the conflict. And then if I get a hit on me, that will be a contract, and I won't live to... That's still pending, and we're still very vulnerable. Pending. I can't unwind that. It's hard to deal because I still deal with, and it's very hard for me. Well, it's more of a confession, and I don't like really confessing. Yeah, so we don't want to get... You don't want to do it. That's not a recording, is it?
It's recording right now.
Don't.
Oh, is it?
Well, when the DEA came to bust me, because I'm still dealing with these people and still dealing with the situation, I'm not going to give too many details. Well, yeah, somebody's going to whip a gun out to shoot me, and they're a felon, and they're known. They just got released from prison for people with, and when they go to kill you, or they went to kill me for no particular reason, for a big tantrum, they shot themselves and they pulled the gun out, and I called the doctor to pull the bullet out. And because they're superstitious, so they went to go see a fortune teller. Fortune teller says, don't mess with that guy. If he pulled a bullet out of you, that bullet wasn't meant for him, it's meant for you, so be careful.
You had to go to prison for a short time.
Yes, 99 days.
Tell us about that just a little bit.
Simple possession charge.
Okay.
Simple possession before 2000 was 4 months or less. 99 days. The Contra thing was upsetting to me. Nicaraguans were trading in weapons, which is way beyond my head because all I'm doing is working for Colombians and crossing. I knew the Colombians kept saying, why do you get involved with those fuckers? They really didn't have anything to do with the Colombians till a certain point happened, and then the baton got handed over. And I thought that was occurring with the Mexicans, and it didn't. Mexicans, I predicted, would take over, and they did, and they rule right now. I did forecast or predict that the Mexicans would take over the market, and Colombians really were agitated with me at that, but I knew that Mexicans were the gatekeepers and that we always had to pay them off. And when we got ripped off by them for millions of dollars, we couldn't say anything. We just went on to the next chapter. And so we'd have to take a hit every so often. And they really handed the baton over to the Mexicans, which I predicted. I knew the Mexicans were going to take over. They're much cruder. They don't deal things the same. The integrity of the game is not the same with Mexicans. They don't have the esteem that a Colombian has. This champagne caviar stuff does not blow with Mexicans at all. They're very crude. They're third world, and they're tough. And that's where I have to jump out of the game, because they weren't the same deal at all. In fact, they handled all aspects of that business, from retail sales on up to laundering money. They want everything for themselves and nothing for nobody else. That's where the cartels from Colombia really got put to a stop. Although the cartels do the upper management, once it leaves the jungles, ends up past Brazil, past Panama, and ends up into the borders of Mexico, or onto submarines on the way to Spain, on the way to Europe, and into the United States, pretty much the Mexicans dominate. They're not the same players. They don't play the same. I don't understand them. Their covertness is much different, and it's an area I've never been able really to understand. Have worked with them slightly, but not comfortable with it. I'll tell you how this works. The best way to control a controlled substance is to be on the inside, to basically control it from the inside, to absolutely be a part of an ongoing operation, and to continue with that. If you control it from the inside, you truly control the controlled substance. This is U.S. government on the inside and buddy with Mexico, and I definitely can tell you, you could try getting stuff across on your own. It's not that hard, but you're not going to get a large scale of drugs across till some border agent and somebody who's part of the inside on the U.S. government's going to let it come in. And that's a good way to do it, because really when it comes bust time, there's no arguing with it. They've already controlled it from the inside. So if you really do want to control drugs, start from the inside, let it go as long as you can. It may seem out of hand, but really when you clamp it down, you've just solved it. And that's their solution. Unfortunately, diversity of drugs out now, you're not going to be able to control it. There's manufacturing of methamphetamine. There's manufacturing of other substances like fentanyl, synthetic heroin, morphine. Cocaine is just a glamour drug. It's really not that present in the scene. Your heroin's a huge problem. Opiates are a huge problem. And controlling that from the inside is being done. It's obvious. But the addiction rate supersedes the actual effectiveness of the U.S. government. They have a real problem. Colombians were predicting this too. They did say that the coca leaf, back in late 90s, they said that they were tearing the coca plants up and they were planting opium in its place. And that sounded disgusting. I never dealt with that very well. I did deal with the Chinese and China White, and I felt that I believe that was a harmful drug, and I can't get involved in anything that hurts people. So I personally omit myself from anything that brings somebody that could cause an overdose and die or hurt themselves. So I definitely backed away. And China White was extremely valuable But because of my moral upbringing, I felt uncomfortable with having to do anything with it. The prices were extremely high. The game was high. Yes, the Chinese and Colombians sat down and we exchanged product and information. I just felt that it would be like comparing riding a bicycle to riding a airplane when you compare China White to cocaine. There's just, and China White was an airplane, and it was way above my head and was too high for me to even deal with. And the jail time and the heat involved was extremely big difference. A pinhead of China White could kill somebody. And that fear factor, because of my moral upbringing, I wouldn't allow it. And marijuana was a recreational drug, and so is cocaine, and I don't believe heroin is. People just don't go, oh, hey, everybody, let's just sit down and do some heroin together. That don't happen. But they will say, oh, hey, let's all smoke a joint or do a line. That can happen, and there's no victims and there's no bad outcome. Out there were cocaine and China White, which was coming off the East Coast, which has always been a really big problem for heat, and I know to stay away from that. The underground growing marijuana thing was here in Seattle, and it was there, and it was illegal, and the DEA was involved. But as far as government having anything major to figure out, they didn't have much to work with like they do today. Today, it is so diversified that I think their new program is, getting back to the subject, is they wait for people to fall in their arms. They're not going to look for a meth lab. They're going to let a meth lab blow up and then just scrape people off the pavement. And that's exactly how they're doing with warrants and stuff. They wait till a person gets in a car and drives and makes a wrong move and then pulls them over, and there comes their warrant. If you could stay under the radar, you can get away with a lot. But that means no trouble, no victims, no crime. If a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody to hear it, there's not a problem. And that's the way good things go. But unfortunately, some of these crimes are just victim crimes. And when you have a victim, you have a crime, you have a problem. If you don't have, I remember the police coming up my stairs one day saying, we don't have a problem with escort girls because nobody gets hurt, but we have a problem with violence. We don't have a trouble with drugs because nobody gets hurt, but we have a problem with violence. If there's going to be a violence involved with escort girls or drugs, we have a problem. Russians didn't show up till 2000s. They were basically East Coast. They were very snotty. Their approach towards me was to open bank accounts, let them run this black card, and then they would scramble all these credit card numbers and then have approached me to go open a bank account and pay me to withdraw that money out of an account. And that sounds like a pretty stupid thing to do. And being able to work for the Colombians and doing what I did, I know how to exchange money, and that is the worst position you could ever be in, is to do something that is at that level and be the sucker that's going to pick up that money, because that's where the problem is going to start. They were sarcastic and show-offy a little bit. They were playing cool. They did have their thing going, just wasn't the same. Their product, they didn't have a product to deal with. It was basically stealing from people, and it doesn't have the integrity. At least with the Colombians, they had to have a product that was grown. It was taken care of, grown, and agriculturally, it was put on a donkey, it was curried through, it was processed. It was a physical product. They made an effort, and nobody was stealing from anybody, and that had value. But if you're going to just take credit card numbers and crunch them and steal from people, your karma wasn't going to be good, and the outcome wasn't going to be good. I didn't like being involved in that, so I didn't deal with the Russians, although they approached me. But their stuff just didn't smell right. You just had to be able to pay off your debts. And yes, they did set you up to where you could never pay them off. So you're always continually struggling to pay off a debt or two with them. And how did debts occur? Mismanaging funds, overpaying security, or robberies, or bust. There's a point to where things are getting so out of hand that I used to leave the front door open saying whoever gets me first is what's going to happen. It's a game of cops and robbers. Who's going to come get me? Are the Colombians going to come assassinate me? Or the police going to come haul me away forever? You just get fed up. You can't just quit. When you're involved in something, you can't quit. The Colombians had a grip on you to where they let you misappropriate funds. And then once you got yourself in a debt like that, you owed them money and you couldn't pull yourself out of it. But I knew better than that until robberies happened and they were inside. Colombians robbed their own stuff back from me. Complications of the situation and the just never got resolved. There's some things that don't get resolved. But I think I took some financial losses that were unnecessary, and I wouldn't be having the hard life I'm having now had I just been very greedy. But I chose peace over product and peace over money. I chose peace. I sleep at night. Things just fall through the cracks. In about 2001, wasn't advantageous to be involved with them anymore. You need to just quit what you're doing and not get involved anymore. You're a good father, but there's other ways to make money, and you need to just count yourself lucky. If we didn't love you and care for you so much, you would be in jail with them. This kind of thing is that it won't happen again. It's like saying the bootleg time and the speakeasies, the 1920s and 30s. It was happening. It did happen then. There was a lot going on, and it doesn't exist anymore. And neither does this. There's not gangsters at the big long Packards like Bonnie and Clyde and Al Capone and them, running Chicago down and all this money and these speakeasies and this money. It did happen. It's real. We got recorded history, but it won't happen again. It evolves. So my story is passé. It's past. It did happen. It was exciting. It won't happen like this again. If I was you, the question I'd ask, what would I do today that would be different? What would I do today that would be different? That question is a whole bunch of questions that you'll have to give me time to think about.
And that is it for this episode of the Marxist Think Tank. Catch us every other week here on SoundCloud. To allow us for our reporting and our content to remain independent, please consider donating to our Patreon and becoming a voting member in the link down below in the description. If you have a news tip or would like to talk to us, please email admin@marxistthinktank.org. Our editor is Sean Sanchez. News writer and producer is Reggie Truman. And I'm Oscar Bastille. Thank you for listening.